All right, one moment while I share my screen.
I'm listed as Miss Lon.
All right, can everyone see my screen? Yes. Okay, great.
Yes.
All right, thank you for joining us today. My name is Rachel Fisher. For those of you who don't know me, I am the Member Services Librarian for Technical Services and the main point of contact for any questions that you will have on the Diversity Audit tool. CCS staff are really excited to roll out the Diversity Audit tool to its members. We have been working on it for over a year, and we previously tested more than one iteration of the tool. So we are really excited with our results of the testing. And I'd like to thank everyone who helped us test the design and categorize the headings. Everyone's input helped us to ensure that the design is as user-friendly as possible. So today I am going to begin by introducing the concept of the Diversity Audit tool, the general topics that it audits, and its limitations and benefits. I will review how to access the tool and provide an overview of the two dashboards that make up the tool. Then I will end with a case study on analyzing and selecting picture books so that you can see the tool used with a practical task. So the purpose of a diversity audit, as many of you are aware, is to help your library to analyze the level of diversity within your collections so that the library can become more inclusive and representative of the community it serves. This can be a very time-consuming process. Without the assistance of a vendor, it can be impossible to analyze a whole library. So I've worked with Bob, Kathleen, Deborah, and a number of library staff to create and test a diversity audit tool that can help you complete a diversity audit in a more efficient and less costly manner. So this tool utilizes the subject headings that are in the CCS catalog to automate the diversity audit process so that you can easily analyze the amount of diversity of the topics included in the whole consortium, your whole library, a specific collection, or your individual selection areas. You can then compare your collection to the population statistics from external sources like the census or other libraries in the consortium and identify diverse items to purchase. So let's review some of the vocabulary that we use to describe the tool in the documentation. So the diversity audit tool is the name for the entire tool. The web app and vendor that is used to create the tool is called Tableau. So you may hear CCS staff mention that from time to time. However, we will try to refer to the whole tool as the diversity audit tool. The tool consists of two data dashboards. So a data dashboard is a visual display of tables and graphs for the purpose of analyzing key performance indicators or statistics. It's called a dashboard because of the display of the different tables and graphs is portrayed in a way that's reminiscent of a way a car's dashboard has different sections that display different indicators. So if you remember any previous demonstrations of the tool that I've done, we had separate dashboards for subject and geographic headings. And from feedback we received, we decided to combine the geographic headings with the subject headings so that you will only need to use one interface for analysis and selection. So you won't hear me speaking about the geographic headings anymore. So this first image is the first dashboard. It's called the Diversity Audit Dashboard. This is the landing page when you sign in. It is what you see when you first log in from the CCS website or from web reports. The dashboard displays the tables and graphs that analyze and summarize the data, and the key performance indicators include the percentage of diversity in the collection and the circulation statistics. From that landing page, you can then access the collection development dashboard. It displays a table to assist you with your selection process by marking titles that the library owns so that you can identify diverse titles that are already owned by other libraries in the consortium. So to start you off, we have included 4 topics that are typically audited during a diversity audit. BIPOC subject headings include the headings for the ethnicities and nationalities of ethnic minorities. BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and Peoples of Color. Disabilities or neurodiversity analyzes subject headings for physical disabilities, mental health issues that can be considered disabilities, neurodivergent conditions, and general disability topics. LGBTQIA+ includes the subject headings on sexual orientation and gender identity. Religious minorities is also included. These topics are then broken down into subcategories so that you can drill down into more granular data. So when I switch to the dashboard, I'll review these topics in more detail, and we'll demonstrate how you can access those subcategories. Additional topics like women, poverty, and immigrants will be added to the dashboard in the future. There are several limitations that you should be aware of. Most importantly, the dashboard automatically tabulates statistics from the subject headings in the bibliographic records. So the data is only as good as the records are. When cataloging, headings can be left out, even if a topic is included in a book. The catalogers who work for CCS libraries do an excellent job. However, summaries don't always clearly explain the diverse elements in a plot, especially when it's just a characteristic of the character. So the tool cannot include ethnicities or sexual orientations of characters, for example, if they have not been included as a subject heading. So an example I came across recently was a fantasy that I read that had gender fluid, gay, and asexual characters. However, the subject headings in the final record only described the book as fiction about magic. There was no indicator of anything else in the summary. So this book would not be counted as LGBTQIA+ without the subject headings being included in the record. I'm also aware that diversity audits of authors are very important. And this is not something that can be accomplished by the current dashboard. We do have future plans for experimenting with a dashboard on author characteristics in the future. One other limitation is that we have not included e-content in the data. There are 2 reasons for this. One is that the subject headings and e-cont records are rather poor and can't be analyzed well. And we also need to keep that number of records that are analyzed down so that the tool doesn't take too long to load the data. So despite these limitations, the data dashboard will provide you with a quick way for analyzing your collection or selection area. so that you can speed up your diversity audit process. While it cannot analyze all of the details that a manual audit could, it can provide you with a way to analyze a larger amount of data than a manual audit could. Having the data stored in the dashboard will also allow you to quickly and easily track improvements over time. And when using the tables for selecting new diverse titles, it will help you to identify titles that are already popular at other libraries so that you know it won't be dead on arrival. And by using the list of titles that display that your library does not own it, you'll be helping the cataloging department too. If you purchase items owned by other libraries, the records already exist in the catalog and won't require additional cataloging time. So before I demonstrate how to access the dashboard, I'd like to review the training documentation and videos that are available to you. There are 4 pages of documentation and videos that you can refer to after this session. We did send those links out in the CCS newsletter, so you may already be familiar with those. I recommend reading and watching the videos in a specific order. So the first one is introducing the diversity audit tool. That's just a brief video. And then I recommend the diversity audit tool interface page that provides an overview of the interface. Then there are 2 separate pages, one for the diversity audit dashboard and the other for the collection development dashboard. So I need to stop sharing the screen briefly and switch to the CCS webpage. One moment. I do hear some people in the background. Could you please mute your microphones? Thank you. All right, so now you should be seeing my my screen that has the CCS website on it. You can easily find the documentation by opening the how-to drop-down menu and selecting reporting. At the top is the diversity audit tool. And I do want to highlight something on the diversity audit dashboard page. If you haven't noticed this yet, if you scroll down to resources, there is a number of resources on doing diversity audits. These include articles, webinars, and there's actually a new book coming out, Auditing Diversity in Library Collections by Sarah Foles. And below that are links to demographic pages like the US Census and other sources on demographics. So there are 2 main links for accessing the diversity audit tool. The first one is under member tools and on the member tools A to Z page. So I'm going to use this link today. The other link is also on the web reports page under diversity audit tool. So if you click on view, it will require you to sign in. You can use your L2 username and password, just like you would sign in to the CCS website or to web reports. And this takes you to that landing page that we call the diversity audit dashboard that's within the diversity audit tool. So on this page, you will see at the top a table of statistics that's labeled summary. This summarizes the data for the broad categories, BIPOC, disabilities, or neurodiversity. religious minorities, and LGBTQIA+. So at the top of this category list, you will see a category called no representation. No representation is assigned to the bibliographic records that do not have subject headings that can be categorized within any of the diverse topics that we are analyzing. And this is your main table of statistics for the broader categories that analyzes the key performance indicators of the percent of the collection that fits within one of these categories and circulation statistics. So you will see the percent of bibs in the collection or bibliographic records, the number of bibliographic records in the collection, the percentage of item records in the collection, which will differ from the percentage of bibs because of the amount of extra copies and the items in the collection. And then for circulation statistics, we have the average lifetime circulation, the total lifetime circulation, the year-to-date circulation count of the current year, and the previous year's year-to-date circulation count. So I do want to point out the average lifetime circulation. That is a statistic that's not measured in most of the reports that you're familiar with, but I think it's really an interesting statistic to consider. It can help you to identify topics that aren't circulating as much, and you can use that as a way to decide how to create displays or carousels or promotions to see if you can increase that circulation statistic. And below the table are two different graphs. So both of these graphs are for the percent of bibliographic records that fit within these categories in your collection. It does not have the bar for no representation so that we can make sure that these graphs have elongated bars and you can see them well. And so the first graph includes a list of all of the libraries in the consortium. And this is a great way for you to benchmark against similar libraries, but we don't want to point fingers at any of the libraries that are less diverse than the others, because every library has different demographic characteristics for the region that they serve. So a great way to use this would be to try to identify areas that have similar demographic statistics to compare to, but not necessarily compare it to every single library. Like, for example, Evanston has a very large African-American population, but Palatine has a smaller African-American population and a larger Hispanic population. So while it could be interesting to compare the two, it's not an exact match for population statistics. So below that table is a percent of bibliographic records graph that is an exact match for the statistics in the summary table. So in order to home in on your specific collection or selection area, there's a number of filters that you can use at the top. The year of the first available date is a slider bar that you can use to change the range of the year of the first available date. This is in the item record, and it is the date in which the item record's circulation status was changed to available for the first time from in process. So this will help you analyze a range of years of purchases. And below that is a publication year. The publication year will differ from the first available date because you can, as you know, buy replacement copies at any year. So the collections that are available are the adult, teen, and youth fiction, nonfiction, and multimedia. So this does not include e-content, nor does it include any multimedia like games or music. that wouldn't have the best subject headings for analysis. And for the type of material, we've included the MARC type of material. This is in the bibliographic record, so it's not the same as the one in the item record. And this is the one that's used to include that image in the pack. And next to that is the statistical code. The statistical code is in the item record. This includes the Dewey decades and the genres. But this does vary a lot from library to library. So for example, one library might use picture books for picture books, but another library might use illustrated and another one might use none. So you may find it useful to select a wide range of different statistical codes. So in the bibliographic record, there are two fields that have languages in it. There's a primary language field and an additional languages field. So from the primary languages field, you could select only English or any non-English languages that you would like to analyze. If you are interested in analyzing bilingual or multilingual works, I recommend checking all languages that you want to analyze in both primary language and additional languages field. There is also a code in this field for multiple languages that you may also find useful. And of course, we also have the assigned branch so that you can just select your library or a specific branch in your library. And this will alter the data in the summary table, but it will not remove any of the libraries from the library graph. But when you do that, it will alter the blue bar graph below so that this blue bar graph will match the data in the summary table. And so below the summary table is the button for drilling down into the subject matter categories. So when we click on this, this will take you to additional tables, and you can navigate through the different subcategories by clicking on the blue tabs above the table. I'm going to focus mostly on this BIPOC table because it is the most complex. So what we've done with this is create two levels of subcategories. So there's a subcategory and a subcategory. So this could get a bit confusing, but for our subcategories, we do have Asian, Black, Hispanic or Latino, Indigenous, Middle Eastern or North African, Arab countries, multiracial, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, and race-related topics like racism or race relations. And below that are the subcategories. So most of these match the subcategories that are in the census's American Community Survey statistics. However, we have included some that don't match that data because there are preferred terms that an ethnic group would prefer over the US Census term. And I don't want to review all of these because it's a pretty long list, but the whole entire list is on the diversity audit dashboard page, as well as notes as what makes up each of the subcategories and subcategories. But I do want to point out that some of these have the term general in parentheses. So that is for the most general subject headings like Asian women that aren't specific to a nationality. And then there are some that have other countries in parentheses. So those would be for the subject headings that are for countries or nationalities that are not included in the list that's highlighted in the subcategories. The other thing that's a bit complex about this table is that you can see that there is a subcategory total for each of the subcategories, and then a BIPOC total at the bottom. So you'll see this only in the BIPOC table. It won't be in any of the other tables since there aren't the subcategories for the other categories. And there's also one additional circulation statistic in the subcategory tables for the holds system-wide that you might find useful for identifying the most popular categories and subcategories. And I do want to let you know that we will be adding some additional circulation data in the future. With our next update to our dashboard, we'll be adding the % of the collection that circulates at a specific period of time, as well as the age of collection to the data. So to go back to that first landing page, the diversity audit dashboard page, you can click on Go Back to the diversity audit tool. And one thing we've added that you may be interested in was a list of the subject headings by category. So it's a really long list and includes thousands of subject headings, but if you are curious, you can find the subcategory, the subject heading, subcategory, or the subject category and subcategory, and then the subcategory of the heading, as well as the number of bibliographic records linked to that subject heading. So I do want to pause to take any questions, because that was a lot of data. Does anyone have any questions on what I've covered so far? Feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat. Okay, we do have one question. Can you review how the filters on the summary page are applied to the subject matter categories page? Okay, so the filters on the initial page for the diversity audit dashboard are automatically applied to the subject matter categories page. So when you make any changes on this page, it will automatically be reflected on the categories page. However, when we do switch to the collection development page, you will have to set up the filters again. So I will review that on the collection development page when I switch to that. I do think I forgot to point out some things on this page. So I do want to point out at the top of the page that we have a help bar. I like to call it the help bar because it has a link to email the help desk and this link to help topics that will take you to the CCS website to find the documentation and videos on the tool. And also at the bottom, I want to point out this toolbar that's built into Tableau. And this is covered on the CCS webpage on the interface. So there are 2 icons for resetting the filters, one to reset the last action, one to reset all of the filters. You can, once you set up your filters, you can customize the view by saving your view. So you can switch to the view by just clicking on this view button at the bottom instead of setting up your filters every single time. But make sure you label it as something that's really distinct for you to find, because every library has their own login, but there's only one login per library. So any users will see each other's views in the list. And down here, this watch button will allow you to subscribe. So you have to create a view before you set up your subscription, and then you can schedule your subscription to be emailed to you at a specified time. So there's more detailed instructions on how to set up your subscription on the CCS webpage. So this allows you to email a PDF of the page that you see here, or an image file. And there's also the button for downloading your report. So you can download it as an image, an Excel file by pressing crosstab, or PDF. So are there any other questions? Jamie asked, how is the average lifetime circulation calculated? So the average lifetime circulation is calculated by adding up the lifetime circulation from every record and then dividing it by the number of records within that category. So it takes this number for, let's say for BIPOC, 10,529,125. And this comes from the item record, and then divides it by, oh, I don't remember if it's held in the, I know it's displayed in the item record, but I think it's divided by the item record. But I'll have to check. It might actually be divided by the bibliographic record instead.
Rachel, I just did the math and you're correct. It's by the bibs in the collection. So the number of titles.
Thanks. Yeah, it's confusing to remember. I know it's displayed in the item record, but it's also related to the title of the bibliographic record and in the tables. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the collection development page. This can be accessed by clicking on the blue collection development button. There is one table of titles on this page. So one thing I do want to point out, if you are interested in downloading anything, it only downloads what's visible on the page. So you will need to download the Excel file to view the whole table. Because the PDF and image will just take a picture of the page. If you subscribe to it, it won't be the best way to access this table, because it's just a snapshot of the page and not the full table. So you have to use the crosstab button for downloading the full table. So this title selected for analysis table will allow you to quickly identify the titles that your library doesn't own yet, when you mark the ones that are owned. So this includes title and author, the subject matter, which is a broad category, the subcategory, and it also has a subcategory for the BIPOC records. Marked titles owned includes an asterisk when that title is owned, but you'll also see the name of the library. This is only when there is only one library that owns that title, and it will highlight the titles owned in yellow. So you will see multiple rows for each title if it fits in different categories or have different collections. So you can see this one, Zia Erases the World, has item records that have been labeled teen fiction and youth fiction. So since I pressed Evanston as an example, their item record is in the youth fiction collection, so it only puts an asterisk in the youth fiction collection because they do not have a teen fiction collection item record, but it's highlighted both rows for them. So it is definitely useful to look at the titles selected for analysis table because this yellow highlighting is not going to carry over into your Excel file when you download it. But I do have a trick for highlighting those duplicate titles that I can show you when I download that report. So to home in on your data, we have a number of filters at the top. So as I mentioned before, these filters need to be set up separately from the Diversity Audit dashboard page. And most of these filters are the same as the ones on the Diversity Audit dashboard page. But one thing I do want to point out is that the publication year has been set to 2022 as a default. So if you do want to look at additional publication years, you will need to alter this. This helps with the loading speed of the page. We also have a subject matter filter that's not included in the Diversity Audit dashboard that only includes the broader categories: BIPOC, disabilities, LGBTQIA+, and religious minorities. Instead of that assigned branch filter, we have an owning library highlighter, which I've already demonstrated. So this is a bit different because it doesn't filter anything out of the table. It just marks it in the marked titles owned column and highlights the titles in yellow. So you do need to, if you need to update the filters, I always recommend unselecting the owning library highlighter, reverting the filters and reselecting it again to make sure it functions properly. It's actually a bit glitchy because of the statistical code filter. Because all of the libraries have different varying statistical codes, it's important to make sure that you select as many variations as possible. So for example, some picture books might have the statistical code of illustrated, or another library might have the statistical code of none, or not use the statistical code. So it's important to select as many as possible that you can think of in order for it to function properly. And one other filter that we have over here on the side that's really great is the search titles selected for analysis search box. So this is can be used when you've learned about an interesting title from another source, like when you're reviewing, when you're looking at reviews or a vendor website. You can type in the ISBN, author, or title to see if it's been added to the collection already. If it's from a different year, you will want to change this publication year filter so it actually is visible to you. However, we do only have one ISBN from bibliographic record in the data. So if you don't find it using an ISBN, you can try the author or title. So I'll just type in a common author, Patterson, for an example. And you can see that there are 4 titles that were published in 2022 that are in the collection and have been categorized as being in the subject matter of BIPOC, subcategory of Black, and subcategory of African American. So I'm going to pause here and take some questions before I move on. So feel free to type them in the chat or unmute yourself. All right, I don't see any questions right now, so I need to switch back to my PowerPoint so that we can take a look at the case study. One moment. Okay, so you should now all be seeing the PowerPoint. So if you remember the demonstration at the past meeting, if you attended it, I used Palatine's picture books collection as an example, and they gave me permission to use their example again. So today we're going to revisit that case using the prompts. What topics should the library purchase in larger quantities during fiscal year 22-23? And can I identify titles to purchase using the tool? So to do so, we will be looking at the purchases from 2021 and 2022 for the youth fiction and nonfiction collection that have the statistical code of picture books. So for this case study, I've pulled up some 2020 census results for Palatine and highlighted the ethnic minorities that make up 3% or more of the population. And we will come back to this after I've applied the filters, but you can just keep this in mind while we're reviewing the data. Palatine's population is 3.3% Black or African American, 11.2% Asian, 3.7% 2 or more races, and 20.6% Hispanic or Latino. Okay, so I have to go back to the website again. One moment while I switch screens. All right, so to analyze the 2021 and 2022 purchases, we will need to use that year of the first available date filter. So I'm going to slide that over to 2021. Okay, and next I'll update the collection filter so that it is for the youth fiction and nonfiction filter and press apply. Since I know that Palatine only uses the picture book statistical code for most of their item records, I'm just going to select picture book and then press apply. And next, I'm going to select the 3 Palatine branches. And press apply. Okay, so the statistics have been altered in the summary table to just display Palatine's picture books collection for the purchases that occurred during 2021 through the update date of August 3rd. So it was last updated yesterday. And we can see that 7.46% of the purchases were BIPOC, 2.99% were LGBTQIA+, 1.12% were religious minorities, and 0.37% were disabilities or neurodiversity. So as you can see, it still has the list of all of the libraries below that, and the blue bar graph matches the summary table. So looking at these statistics, would anyone like to volunteer their suggestion for a topic that Palatine should purchase in larger quantities during the 2022 and 2023 fiscal year? Feel free to type it in the chat. Okay, we do have one suggestion to look at the subcategories page to see the breakdowns for BIPOC. That's a great suggestion. So I'm going to press drill down into subject matter categories. So looking at the BIPOC subcategories, we can see that the purchases during those periods were about 1% Asian, 2.99% Black, 1.49% Hispanic. So I think this is really interesting to look at because you can see that Palatine selectors did a really great job at purchasing the amount of books on African and African American topics that actually match the percentage of the population really closely. So if you can remember, that was 3.3%. So that's a really close match. So would anyone like to volunteer a suggestion for topics that Palatine should purchase in larger quantities during this fiscal year, 2022 and 2023?
Rachel, this is Rebecca, and I have a question I should know the answer to.
Sure.
It's just looking at subject headings. So Hispanic Latino doesn't necessarily include any material purchased in Spanish, correct?
Correct. If you wanted to just narrow down to the Spanish only materials, you can use the language filter to select Spanish.
Okay, thanks.
Feel free to just throw out a suggestion. It's okay if you have any suggestion for them. If there are no other suggestions, I'll provide some suggestions. So when I compare the statistics to the population, I can see that the population of Palatine is 20.6% Hispanic. So I would suggest purchasing more books on Hispanic or Latino topics. And since the population is also 11.2% Asian, I would also suggest purchasing books on Asian topics. So let's take a look at that collection development dashboard to see if we can find any books on there that Palatine may be interested in. So I'm going to reset the view because it still has my previous filters. And we'll change the filters for the year of first available date to 2021 and 2022. And I'll alter it to include the fiction, youth fiction, and youth nonfiction. And since we were just looking at BIPOC topics, I will select the subject matter for BIPOC, press apply. And as I mentioned, we need to select as many statistical codes as possible so that the owning library highlighter will function properly. So while Palatine really only uses picture book for the statistical code, we also have to select none and illustrated. And I'm also going to just throw in a couple of others just to be safe, to make sure that it selects the titles owned properly. So that could include read along. And I know that some beginning and easy readers aren't necessarily picture books, but I will include those just to be safe, and board books as well. And then I'll press apply. Okay, so next I will use the owning library highlighter for Palatine to highlight the titles they own. Okay, so as I mentioned, sometimes the owning library highlighter gets a bit glitchy. If you don't have enough statistical codes in it, it won't highlight the titles owned properly. So one way to tell is that if you hover over the library's name, you can see that it's selected 174 items selected. So that looks like it could be about right. If it's a really small number and it's like only highlighting 14 out of 284, then something's probably wrong. So I recommend resetting all the filters and starting over and adding in additional statistical codes, making sure that the word none is selected and as many variations are selected as possible. And that should give you a better opportunity to be able to identify what your library does not own so that that owning title, the marked titles owned, is functioning properly. So if you are regularly reviewing the same titles, you can set that as your view. So I'm going to just demonstrate the Palatine picture books view by typing in the name of the view and pressing save. So if you click on that view at the bottom in the toolbar, view original, you can then see that under my views, you will find Palatine pictures, picture books, or picture view. I typed by accident. And you can switch between your different views. So that would allow you to come back to this page, press your view, and not have to set up your filters again. So to download this to an Excel file so that you can sort through the data better, You can press this download button at the bottom of the toolbar. And you need to press cross tab to download the Excel file. It will show you multiple sheets to select when the dialog box opens. You will need to just select this first one that's labeled download, and then you can choose Excel or CSV. So I'll download the Excel file and press download. I have to switch screens. I think that was just on the web page, so you can see this. You should now be seeing the Excel file. So as you can see, the yellow highlighting is not there of the title, but we have in this marked titles owned column asterisks when multiple libraries own it, and just the word Palatine when only Palatine owns it. So in lieu of marking the title yellow, there's a trick in which Excel can highlight the duplicate titles in the title column. So this is called conditional formatting. It's on the home ribbon. You can press highlight cell rules and then duplicate values. And then press OK. You can change the color if you'd like. So for each subject heading that could be in a different category, and for different collections, there will be different rows. So as you can see, it's highlighted Yendo Agana, and this has 2 rows because it has African American subject headings and African subject headings for the African continent. And this one called Wishing Upon the Same Stars has race-related topics like racism or race relations and Middle Eastern and North African Arab countries. So if we were looking for a title to purchase, there's a number of different things you can do in Excel to manipulate the data. You can sort the statistics by number. You can use filtering to only look at the ones that Palatine does not own. And all of the instructions for how to use Excel are on the CCS webpage, on the page that's on the collection development dashboard. So in order to find something quickly that they might not own, I'm just going to use the filter here to uncheck the asterisk in Palatine. And then identify something quickly that's Hispanic or Latino. That's not necessarily highlighted, so we know it's doesn't have duplicate rows. And here's one that has Hispanic or Latino headings. It looks like it could definitely be a picture book and not one of the additional ones that might not be picture books. And it's in Spanish, or it might be bilingual. So let's take a look at that in Leap. So this column I is the bib ID. That's the bibliographic records control number. To confirm that the library doesn't own it and that the owning library highlighter has not been glitchy, you can just log in to Leap and do a quick search. So I'm going to search for the bibliographic record, and for the keywords, I'm going to select control number. So we can see that this is definitely a picture book, and it's not owned by Palatine yet. It's definitely a bilingual picture book. So this could be something that Palatine might want to Oh, I needed to switch screens again. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry for switching screens so much. Okay, so I've looked up the bibliographic records control number in the Find tool. And you can see that Polyterial Man is a bilingual picture book, and it's not owned by Palatine. So this could be a pretty good option for someone selecting picture books for Palatine's Spanish language collection to potentially do more research in and choose to order. So I covered a lot of information today. Is there anything that you'd like me to repeat? So we've got about another 30 minutes that we could use. You feel free to ask any questions or ask for additional demonstrations. And feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat. So if you feel I went too fast covering something, feel free to shout it out and let me know that you want me to demonstrate it again. So Jamie asks, is religious minorities pretty much not Christian? Yes, pretty much. It's although some things that could be potentially like somewhat Christian could be in the New Age category. So let me just switch to that. And show you the religious minorities subcategories. And so they've been broken down by religion. So we've got atheism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Indic. So that includes subject headings that could be really general to like all Indian religions, but could also be, Indic could also be referring to pre-Hinduism, like myths that existed before Hinduism was created. Islam, Babism, and Baha'i have been combined. There's also a category for Jainism. The Jewish category includes not just religion, but anything that's related to the Jewish culture and Jewish history. So that's really large because that also includes a lot of World War II history books on the Holocaust. New Age is where you'll find topics like on Wiccanism and Scientology. There's also a separate category for Sikhism. I've combined Taoism and Confucianism, and African religions like Voodoo are combined under Voodoo and other African religions. I've tried to eliminate as many like prehistoric religious ideas like ancient Greek as possible, but there are some potential subject headings like ones on like general gods and goddesses that might be in here that refer to ancient religions. Michelle asks, she wanted to confirm that the tool pulls from LCSH, LCGFT, Homosaurus terms, and Spanish language headings. It includes LCSH, which is Library of Congress subject headings. It does not include LCGFT because a lot of those don't have ethnicities, but some do. So we can look into including that, but it's might also already be in the subject heading. So we'll have to study that and see if those are duplicates. but it definitely has homosaurus terms and Spanish language subject headings in it. Yes, LCGFT does have more specific terms like gay fiction, but I haven't actually looked into more detail to see if that's like a duplicate of what could be already in the Library of Congress subject headings or homosaurus subject headings. So I can definitely put that on my list to research to see if it's worth including that in the tool. We do have a request to show again how to get to the tool from web reports and the website. So from the website, if you are on the CCS homepage, you can open the drop-down menu for Member Tools, press Member Tools A to Z. And then at the top, you'll see this box for the diversity audit tool, and then you can press view. There's one other way to get to the tool and that's from web reports. So on reports.ccslib.org, you will see this index link at the top for the diversity audit tool. You click on it, it will go down to the diversity audit tool section, and you can click on the diversity audit tool, and this will take you to the landing page. Are there any other questions? Okay, if there are no other questions, I do want to post in the chat a link to our evaluation survey. Please fill it out after the session today. We would love to hear what you thought of our training. CCS staff are always interested in improving our training offerings. Okay, you will find that link in the chat. I will also send that to you in a message when I send out the link to the video. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us at the help desk. And let us know how we can improve the dashboard or improve our documents or videos on the dashboard. So we do have plans to update the dashboard by the end of the fall with additional circulation statistics and additional diversity categories. So it's definitely something to look forward to. And I'd like to thank everyone for showing up today.